money's going to be about 1/10.
Good morning, Breakfast Clubbers.
Anyway, I know a lot of it, but we do it.
But we'll wait till everybody's done. Bring enough stories for everybody. Okay, so the children are going to sing for us. They're like, no. Okay, we got to do, let's get acquainted. It's a good time to get acquainted. It's a good time to know who is standing close beside you and to smile and say hello. Goodbye, that looks and feeling. Goodbye, glassy stare. Here's my hand, my name is Ernie. Come on, look over there. Put your hand right there. Okay. What we're going to do is do a couple of announcements. We have a couple people want to take a couple minutes to say a couple things. Then we have later I'll give some updates on stuff and different things. But our main featured speaker today is going to be Dr. Phranq Tamburri. Now, Dr. Phranq has been heavily involved in libertarian, philosophical, agorist, Austrian economic kind of guy for a long time. I had him on the show Monday, and it was very, very interesting. So much, in fact, that I think that he should tell you his story. He trained and lived in Japan for a while. And he's a doctor that, well, I'll tell you what kind he is. Some of you might need his help. But the thing that I thought was very interesting is that he's been a libertarian and following Dr. Paul since '88. Wow. He voted for him when he ran as a libertarian in '88. So here's that knew him from back in the day. Last night, I just got sent to me it was an email, and it went like this: "Do you really want this guy to be president of the free world?" Is one of those kind of things. And he's That's right. That's the first person I thought of. So I go like this. So I go, it's got to be a Rizzoli thing, So I get up and I start watching it, and it's like 20 minutes of all of the speeches that he's given, since he was congressman back in the 70s and so on. Because he's been made use of that. Speaker, I rise to tell you how screwed up you are. Okay. So I remember some clips from this from the last 2008 election cycle. And one of the, after he started running, I had a fundraiser at a home in Las Vegas, and it was the first time that he and I got to actually kind of just take some time and talk about, Levolution had been going on for a while, and it was like April, May, something like that in '07. And I go to him, I'm like, we're there, and it's the first time we got a chance to talk, probably the longest conversation we've had. And I go, Ron, I saw your Morton Downey interview. And he goes, oh, I hate that. That what had happened is that they had told him when he ran for president in 1988 as a libertarian, we'll put you on national television. You have to go and do what for? But it's like the Jerry Springer show. You guys remember Morton Downey show or whatever? No. It's the Jerry Springer show. And they said, if we have you on here, we want you to be animated, man. Come on, you gotta give them what for. You gotta bring a really big shoe. He goes, I'm showbringer, man. Right on, I'll do it. So he goes up, and it was on drugs. He's the anti-drug war guy. Well, you had the guardian angels, remember that? The little parades and all that stuff. Well, the guardian, we got to stop the drugs and drug war and government and all this kind of stuff. Well, Dr. Paul gets up there and he's like, animated and yelling. And, hey, come in, the guy's just changing his channel and they shoot him because he had a drug. He's going, I'm like, wow. I go, I know how you really are. And he goes, yeah, well, they told me I would never do that again. That's why he's so, well, God, you shuckers, you willikers, if that's why, from that interview, from that first expression, he's been trying to live that down for 20-something years, okay? 30 years or whatever. So I understand default position is much more animated, okay? Much more, you guys are messed up. So I was very interested in watching this video, and it went from the 70s up to now. But yeah, somebody had asked, Jim was asking, he goes, "Where's Mike Mazzulli, man? Where is that guy? I want to talk to him."
See what he looks like.
How many people know Mike Mazzulli? Okay. Now Mike is, this is a joke for all of us that have known him since the 90s. He's Democrat, then he's Republican, he's Libertarian, he goes back to Democrat, then he's Libertarian, then he's Republican, he goes back,
All within the same week.
Yeah. The joke was, it must be Wednesday. Well, now he's objectivist, whatever. So he's a libertarian objectivist, but he likes that because they want to go, kill somebody. All right? It's the Ayn Rand kind of thing. We got to make the world safe for democracy or something. Let's go. And now he's got this nuke fetish thing going on. So on Freedom's Phoenix, you'll see every now and then somebody just hammering on Ron Paul. Just, he really, and he, whatever. And I'm like, okay, maybe not at the top of the page, but we'll put it on. So Pal and I just kind of put it up there. Everybody know what Mike Mazzulli has to say. So I'll get emails complaining. They'll say, "I can't believe you put this guy on the site." And I'm like, "Hey man, so you know what everybody's thinking? Just bring it up." I go, "Are you reading them? Really? Seriously?" They go, "Well, he's on your." I go, Why do you read them? I mean, after the first time, what are you doing?
That's why you had to make a comment.
Right.
Comment, call it an idiot.
Now this is one of the reasons why we set Freedom's Phoenix up the way we did it. In the past, these kind of guys will go out and they'll just trash the internet, Facebook, whatever they want. And Facebook kind of does the same thing. They kind of came after this kind of stuff. When you have someone that doesn't go challenge, they're just authoritarian, they use big words and whatever, it just kind of has more value. But when they come up on Freedom's Phoenix against a lot of you guys, and it's just, right. So then, and if it's really bad, I'll comment. I'll just, I'll do a smiley face, or I'll make one sentence, or I'll go, yeah. So by doing that, what happens is, the search engines, whenever anybody Googles him or their work, it will come across Freedom's Phoenix, and you see all the comments that people have made about them. So normally when they do articles without comments, the comment section, that's what Donna, my wife, she enjoys more than anything else. She always goes in the comments, Whatever they screw the article, there's 237 comments on, CNN's whatever, saying how screwed up the writer is. This is what has changed in journalism. You're not just able to go out there and just do what you want. You got to get vetted, planet. I like it. Okay, so I put it out. I had that just the way we were. Phranq is going to tell us about his experience over the last 4 or 5 years in Arizona inside the Republican Party. When he goes, he hangs out with people like you at district meetings and so on, and been a fly on the wall. Been nice. Oh yeah, I'm the calm, cool, collected libertarian that knows how to wear a tie. Yeah, I got like a DR in front of my name. I'm a good guy. Okay, you just keep yapping. All right. They go to the convention this last Saturday. Had the Arizona GOP convention, and a lot of interesting things happened. A lot of things didn't happen. People expected to happen. A lot of people didn't know things were going on. We'll talk about that. Then. Now we're going into this cycle. The delegates will get selected someday. A lot of people thought that they were going to get selected last Saturday. No, the Republican Party said, 2 years ago, they made the decision not to have the delegation selected at the convention. That was a conscious decision that was done 2 years ago. Now, I don't know how much, Earl and Ruth know about this, but between Christmas and New Year's in 2010, after the midterm election, they were afraid, the libertarians were inside the gate. Oh my God, okay? So what they wanted to do is to take the libertarians and set them off to the side so that the Republican Party could maintain their control of their whatever shiny badges. So they changed the law. Thank you. Well, I want to hear Ernie. So they changed the law to where, Okay, I'm gonna sum it up real quick. There were 2 Libertarian Ron Paul supporters that were coming inside the party as precinct committeemen. That was how you take over the party. But I knew from election law and all this stuff that the party doesn't mean anything. I'm Hitler-style, Mao, see, whatever, and I go to Secretary of State and I file my paperwork and say, I'm Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever, and here's my signatures, I'm running for office. That was it. There's nothing else you can do about it. I get on the ballot, I get the most votes, I go to the general, I'm the Libertarian, dun-da-da, with a little mustache, okay? Other states have to where the party themselves determine. You have caucuses, or you go through precinct committeemen, your district thing, you vote, all kinds of stuff to where the party itself controls who the candidate is. In Arizona, that is not so. That's why McCain's still there. So what happens is that they just have the money and whatever, they go to the Secretary of State, file the paperwork, they're on the ballot, get used to it. So what is the purpose of the party? They don't do anything. They'll go, well, our platform and our purpose and who freaking cares if anybody can get on the ballot any way they want and be communist? Okay? What is the purpose of the party?
Money.
Yeah.
So 2 Republicans can be on the same.
Yeah, no, it's, remember Ted Downing, those of you that were here, he was talking about an initiative to change the primary. I got involved with the attorneys in that and everything, and they were just trying to, get this dumb libertarian to lay hands on it, and that, oh yeah, this is, pace, this way, and the libertarians are freaking out because this is going to kill the Libertarian Party. They won't go to the general election with automatic 2 persons for representative. You have ballot status, they win in the primary, go to the general. You got a bunch of libertarians to vote for in the general because they're going to make it like a city election to where you have just the top vote getters go to the general like in a city election, okay? I am for individuals. Everybody gets on the same, everybody does the same, that's all I care about. Everything else will work itself out. But what they've done is they want to eliminate, they're not worried about the libertarians, they're worried about libertarianism. They are worried about what's coming inside the party. So this is what they did. Right after Christmas and before New Year's in 2010, they had an executive committee telephonic meeting to where they brought everybody together and we're going to have this and boom, and we passed and here it is. And we got the PDF of the budget, what they were proposing, the motion, all that kind of stuff, and we published it on Freedom's Phoenix. Oh, they didn't like that none too much, okay? Because this is what they were doing. They go, we are creating a parallel party. You have the Republican Party, that's precinct committeemen that do all their meetings and they go to their elections and do all this kind of stuff. And precinct committeemen, they go, oh, that's the lowest level of government to have. Bullshit, okay? Committeeman is an internal party office. It's like saying having a taxpayer-funded election for the JC officers. Has nothing to do with government. Has everything to do with the party. In the late 70s, they changed the election law and so on to have the government pay for their precinct committeeman elections. It has nothing to do with anything. It's like the Kiwanis Club and the JCs having you fund their elections. And I go, where did that come from? So that was part of my lawsuits and all that kind of stuff. So what happened is, that's even not good enough for them. Now that they got this structure over here, and the guys with little shiny badges going around thinking they do anything, they said, we don't even want that, even pretend people. So they created a parallel party, and they said, they put in charge of this thing, the board of directors are made up of the incumbent Republican congressional leaders, the U.S. senators, McCain, to give it, credibility, and the head board of directors of this thing is the state chair of the Republican Party. They go in and say, this is what we're going to do. All money that's contributed to Republican causes, it was a Karl Rove thing, I'm going to tell you right there. All money will be contributed to this, not the precinct committeeman Republican Party, but to this parallel organization. Oh, and by the way, in case you're worried that's not really Republican, we'll have all the delegation, all the elected to high monkey mucks will be on the board of directors of this. Oh, and so that we don't have to spend a bunch of money and doing everything, this organization is going to use all the offices, all the equipment, the phone numbers, and everything of this organization. And these guys work for this. Vote. Yeah, that's a good idea. So now we put a bunch of light on it, and they went, oh, wait a minute, we can back off a little bit, and then they did it later. which is like law. Oh, you don't want so much control? Oh, we stopped. Well, then they come right around and do it again anyway, okay? So, for me, sitting back watching all this game everybody's playing inside politics and going to conventions, woohoo, overwhelmed by Ron Paul people there. Let Phranq talk about that. But it meant nothing. Nothing. It means nothing. But Russell Pierce got elected first vice chair. Beep, shiny badge. That Monday, last Monday, right 2 days after he got elected he filed for Senate again.
Government leaks.
I'm afraid he's going to run for sheriff. Now, you think I'm kidding? Arpaio said, you know, a lot of people know some people know some people. You know, Arpaio's like, hey man, I'm here until Russell Pierce can take my position. Well, he can't. So we'll see what happens. So this is, now,
He said that?
well, that's, yeah, the rumor. So this is the situation. Now they just introduced legislation called the Arizona State Guard. Okay? You have, in Title 16 of the Arizona State Constitution, you have militia. You have Section 1, which is, it used to be all able-bodied men between 17 and 55 or 45 or whatever it was, you know, and living in Arizona that have declared their intention of being a U.S. citizen. All you have to do is just declare your intention, and you're part of the militia. That's what it says. Well, then they changed it and altered it. Now it's capable, and they take out men and women, and we did an initiative in the mid-90s to make fun of this, and we go, you know, can't we just be willing? Do we have to be in it? So it's not involuntary servitude. No, by the way, what about the women and so on? So we had fun with this over the years. Well, they keep changing, muddling it around. But the thing is that the first Section 1 is the state militia that's unorganized. It's called the unorganized militia. You know, I breathe in and out, I get done, and I defense of, and everybody can bite. No, and I get to do it even if I intend on being a U.S. citizen. I don't have to be a U.S. citizen. So that pisses off a lot of people, okay? Section 2 is the organized militia under the governor. That's a National Guard, that, you know, that kind of thing. Well, now they want to create a third one that's kind of in between it. It's called the State Guard, and it's all about the immigrant thing. We're going to go on the border and everything, and guess who's first commando squadron of JT Ready, you white supremacists, we got to kick us some brown people, okay? So that's already, you know, being done right now. Now, a lot of the people are going, yes, pace, right on, we need to have, you know, our own little Blackwater. Well, you think it's not. Let me tell you what happens. In the legislation, not only is this position has a commandant that's appointed by the governor that runs this like a military, but it is a paid force that only serves inside the border of Arizona, except when hired out by other governors. They go to the governor and they say, hey, we need your help to come over here and help us do whatever. Absolutely. But you got to sign this, you know, bill that you're going to pay for all of the costs and the payment and all this stuff for them going and doing whatever you want them to do. So this is going to be an armed mercenary force of the governor of the state of Arizona. And in the legislation, they are given immunity from any liability for anything they do to you. And they get to RICO and seize anything that you got and sell it to fund themselves. This is law that they're doing right now. I did a whole hour and a half or something on the show on this. Just reading it. Put it up. Now, when I went up and I said, I want to see what the old Constitution said. I mean, I know they made a lot of changes. Everywhere I went, the archives, anywhere, they never showed you what it originally was. In some places, they say, well, they changed it, this was changed on this date. So anything to do with the militia and so on, they didn't give you the dates or that it was ever anything different. And I'm going, man, is this a freaking conspiracy? So I put in the article, I said, hey, anybody out there can find this, let me know. One of the listeners did. He goes, I found it. Here's a PDF of an original copy of the Arizona Constitution, a photoed copy, page by page, in an archive in California. And I go, it makes you go, Because think about it. I've been dealing with Arizona election law and Constitution, going to court over a dozen times. I've been to Arizona Supreme Court 3 times. I've been to Ninth Circuit, you know, once on 2 cases. I've studied this, okay? It is amazing to me how much they control the record. So it reminded me of that one old Star Trek episode where, you know, he had an attorney, Captain Kirk is needing somebody to defend him on whatever, and this guy like books. None of this computer homogenized, pasteurized crap of what they said happened. You get the books, the real intent, you know. It's Star Trek, and he's got books all over the place. And I'm going, yeah, what he said, okay? Because you actually go look at what it was, the person that's translating that, that's photographing it, that's scanning that, that's putting it into a computer record, you know, that guy often works for the man, and they want what they want to be in the computer. When you go actually look at it, why you guys remember Ricky Duncan, I mean, you know, he was real famous for this. He'd find all kinds of good stuff. I mean, he actually would be blowing dust off books in the library. So this is what I'm afraid is going to happen. I won't say which legislator, but there is a legislator, one of the tried and true guys down there that I'm going to be meeting with Thursday, had made a request through someone that I go talk to them about this. And I know what they're going to say. But Ernie!
Last name start with a B?
But Ernie, we need to have, you know, we need to go and get and do and kind of, and don't you understand? Yes, I understand completely. And my concern is one thing. In the mid-90s, we knew to watch for this. That sooner or later, they want to take the unorganized militia, us, the people that are armed, because Arizona was the last state in the Union, in the continuous states. Okay, 1912. Our 100-year anniversary comes up Valentine's Day this year. Now, when they do that, you would think they'd have, like, you know, copies of the original Constitution laying around somewhere or something, you know, and hell no, especially then, okay? So there's a lot of things that we've done and been involved in, it doesn't matter. But I'm going, you know, I am concerned, and always have been, that they are going to try and take Section 1 militia and turn and control the government in some way. Because in the mid-90s, you guys know Dean Pleasant, Viper Militia Dean and so on, right? When we used to have a box, it's called the House and Senate Mail House in there. And the way you would do it is you would go in, and they would have all these boxes, and they would do all the pre-file bills in there. Everybody would get a copy. You had different organizations. You go, we had SAFE, Second Amendment is for everyone. And we would go in there, and it was really the Libertarian Party. So we go up there, and you'd have to, beginning of this legislative session, you would have to go in like twice a day or to fill up and they just throw them away. But that's the only way that you got the pre-file bills. And they'd be thick, thin, so just stacks of bills, okay? All the laws they were going to pass. Well, now you can do it online, kind of. Now you got to trust them, right? So anything that they file, they put them in these boxes, we go take them, we put them at our Libertarian headquarters, and we sit at a big table like this, about half the size of this table here, and we'd all just pass around and look at what it had to do with, and you see in Capitol what they were adding, strike through what they're changing, and it doesn't matter, that's right, special interest going to get a sidewalk contract, yep, 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 yep. Then you go, oh, education, ooh, that's where the money is, they're going to do something here, they're going to do this. All of a sudden, Dean goes, ding, 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 ding. What it was, they wanted to take the unorganized militia and put it under the control of the Adjutant General. The Adjutant General is the liaison from the governor to the U.S. military. So now they take all these people that are free individuals defending themselves and got guns, and they say, now you're under the military of the Adjutant General and federalized, and you belong to us. And we went, oh, hell no. We see where this is going. This is in the mid-90s, anti-militia craze, they wanted to, you know, whatever. So Dean goes down when they had the hearing scheduled for this bill. As you have the legislators up here like this, they're sitting there doing their thing. Okay, now, Bill, we have Speaker Dean wants to, you know, whatever, go ahead and have your say. He gets up and he goes, he didn't get in 20 seconds into him analyzing what he understood did. This would put the people under control of it. And the second he did that, the Adjutant General from the back of the room ran up like this. We're pulling that bill. And we sat there and go, what the hell just happened? So we knew to watch for this. This state guard is an attempt to try and, you know, get in between those two and have their own thing because they know we're watching. If they try to collectivize, incorporate the individuals under the control of the liaison to the federal government, you can kiss your Second Amendment and militia and we defend against, goodbye. You see my point?
And means if anybody else wants
What other-
to call themselves a militia,
don't
and
have
you're
your
not
constitutional
registered with them, then you're a troublemaker. You're a terrorist.
Well, they say that anyway, but you know, at least we have protection in the law, okay? So that's what's going on right now. In the name of what? Immigration. It doesn't have anything to do with immigration. It has to do with power. Consolidating the power. Eliminating your power. Them taking the power. They know I know. I put it up on Freedom's Phoenix, immediately went and hit. Andrea Garcia called me and said, you got to see this. I knew exactly what it was right off the bat. Because they've talked about this before. But I know what to look for. Are they messing with Section 1? Well, I've been on their ass enough that they go, oh no, we're not messing with Section 1. Damn Skippy. So I'm going, I'm just like, yeah, you know, just make sure not. Now this RICO stuff I have a concern with. You know, all this RICO seizure thing, that's not good. So anyway, that's what's going on with that. So now we have the Republican Party comes in. You have Russell Pierce gets first vice chair. He files paperwork. He's going to run for Senate again. Then we'll see what happens with that. But now, how do you select the delegates? Always in the past, you had the delegates were selected at the state convention to go to the national convention. We want Ron Paul. So you had this overwhelming number of Republicans there. He wins the straw poll by hundreds. Nobody wants to tell you who won. They don't let the people speak. You know, Phranq will get all the details of it. But I tell you, I thought we were here to elect delegates. We're not here to elect delegates? I thought we were electing delegates. What happened to delegate selection? Oh, didn't you get the memo? We're doing that in May. And it's supposed to be proportional to what the presidential preference primary is, and this, and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. Because Arizona has changed its primary date. They went before, you know, some date, you know, and you're not supposed to. Oh, yes, before April, our presidential preference. National Party goes, your delegates are cut in half, Arizona.
They did the same shit to a bunch of other states.
Yes, they did. Let me tell you. You have 50-something delegates that are supposed to be. Okay, we elect 50 of them. Oh, you lose half of them. Who decides which half don't get to go?
Right.
Now you go to Tampa. You're in Tampa. This happened in 08. I'm not making this up. This is how they do it. Okay? Libertarians, same way. I mean, it's all this, you know, ouch, quit it, I got a shiny badge. They go to Tampa, and they'll do what they did in 08, and they'll go, hear ye, the chair recognizes, what's his face, you know, chill in the audience for whatever. I move that we give the state, the great state of blah, 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 back their delegations. It was unfair and shouldn't have done that, and we should give it to them. And everybody goes, I second motion, rump, golf clap, yeah, I give it back to them. Well, those people aren't there. Oh, well, so you have full representation. We got a whole pool of vote how we tell them out here, alternate delegates that will fill your delegation, and you got full delegation. Aren't you happy? And that's how they do it. That's how they've always done it. That's how they're going to do it. When they do this, and they're going to do this, okay, it'll be crystal clear to everybody by May 12th. When this happens, the evolutionary activists, these young people, these, you know, I wouldn't say naive, but certainly trusting more than they should be, uninformed, thinking that they were going there, we come in big numbers and vote for Ron Paul, okay? What they're going to do is they're going to figure it out. They got screwed. And this was planned 2 years ago. So I go, what are you going to do about it? You get 5 signatures. You fill the ballot up with legislators. You have dozens and dozens of libertarian candidates. And it's the last year you can do it because they're changing the law with this initiative to prevent the Libertarian Party from doing exactly what I'm going to talk about. And we'll do it after Phranq. But this thing, all these Ron Paul people, because after August, for 2-3 months, you will not be able to hear Ron Paul talking about any of these issues. It won't be any in the press. Candidates will be up there talking about it, as much as they say they are now. You won't hear anything about it. But what if you had all of these revolutionaries running for state and county and statewide and congressional offices going, Fed sucks, war sucks, government sucks. You see my point? You have those people out there, then you don't shut the message down. And I can help make that happen. And it takes you, you know, from 5 to 20 signatures, doing one time, boom, here we are, sons of bitches, hello. Yeah, we'll drag him in. Doctor, come on up. This is the time, I got pretty much out what I want to say. We'll be talking about this at the beginning of the next Breakfast Club will be, I think it's the 3rd of March. Tom Jenny from the Americans for Prosperity is going to be one of the speakers next month, and he's going to have a constitutional convention. We need a constitutional convention so we can stop them from spending.
You gonna bring your camera?
I'm like, right.
Definitely gonna bring.
So this is going to be interesting. He wants to defend himself. He wants to tell you how he's going to, we're going to save America by opening up the Constitution for a section again. And they have a bill for Arizona's resolution to do that in right now. And it's being held off, because of John Birch Society and a lot of people like us being buttheads about it. Now, Phranq he's become a good friend. He's a very articulate individual, long history. I'm encouraging him to tell his history. Oh yeah, why you got that ponytail? And we have, and how he's known Dr. Paul for this long and what he's learned by being a fly on the wall up to this point. Dr. Phranq Tamburri. Then we'll get into, we have a speaker who wants to talk about citizens grand jury, and we'll do that before we leave today.
All right, well, I appreciate it. It's kind of a real honor being here. I'll give kind of this, first of all, let me apologize up front. I'm a professional speaker in medical circles and other areas, and typically when I give these talks, they're extremely put together and PowerPoints and set up, and I work on them for months. And this is going to be more of a kind of a pearl-looza, different pearls. And when I talk to medical groups, I look at them as more the advanced class. You guys are the PhD class, the advanced class. So in other words, instead of talking to students or laymen about medicine, the real basics, when you already understand what's going on, you can just kind of talk in shorthand. So we kind of bring up a lot of different, maybe some pearls as we go. I have this organized somewhat in 3 basic parts. First of all, Ernie did want me to reiterate a bit about my background. He was asking quite a bit on the air, on a past radio show, a bit more of how I kind of came up with, or at least evolved in this libertarian state of mind when it wasn't very popular. So I guess I'll discuss that for about maybe a third. The other third, I'll talk about the convention and what I've been seeing as sort of the Trojan horse libertarian with the Republicans. And of course, in some ways, what's even the point? After listening to Ernie here, I may as well just sit back down. As Ernie would say, it's no point. Admiral Stockdale, who am I? Why am I here? What's the point, right? Anyway, but that's the other part. So I'll definitely discuss that. And then the third part, I'd like to just add more big picture and just give you some ideas of what I've learned, how to articulate and discuss to Republicans, independents, or essentially, as we call this room, the blue pills. I think there's certain ways that we can discuss, certain ways I think that we can open their mind. And I think it is important overall because, let me start off with one basic point of view. You guys all know the blue pill? All right. Yeah.
Blue pill, blue hairs.
Yeah, blue pill, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Matrix, so it's kind of a libertarian movie, or at least from libertarian directors. Let me start with just one point, then I'll get into my background. If some magician could make Ron Paul president tomorrow, I'd say no. I wouldn't want him president. I'd probably be thrown off the stage already. But the main reason is for me, we need to have the people behind it. This country we're having an addiction problem. Imagine you have your uncle. His name's Sam, right? And he's got an addict, and he's doing like lines off the mirror of Federal Reserve notes, and he's got this addiction to money. And the problem is that if you go through withdrawal, which is what Dr. Paul wants to do, the libertarians, as a physician, you need to treat the underlying cause. You need to put him through a detox program, and that is what this country needs to do economically. The problem is, I can put a patient for a detox, but if any of you have seen someone like, or movies like Ray Charles, detox is an ugly thing. And you get stomach cramps and convulsions and diaphoretic and nausea, vomiting. It's a nasty business to go through that. And if you don't have a family on board, they're going to fire you, the doctor, maybe even sue you because they can't sit back and watch their loved one go through a detox. It's too painful. They have to understand what the outcome will be and why. So in many ways, why I sometimes waste my time with Republicans and other groups, because it's that important that they get on board, enough of them get on board, because when this thing happens, and we all know it's not a matter of if, it's when. You know, you drop a ball, it's going to fall. This is kind of the way it's going to go, and the liberty movement will find a homeostasis one way or the other. It's just hopefully we can do it as peacefully as possible, but I think the more people that we have open and aware, it'll be easier for that transition, hopefully less problems, less violence if there is any, and ultimately not to tamper with the Constitution. Now, you guys are the PhD class, so I'm not going to try to be cheesy with this, but when I give talks to other groups, I just kind of give you some visual aids of some little toys that I do. I gave a talk for a public speaking thing a number of years ago at Toastmasters, and I did a thing on the Constitution. Now, this is, I know, kind of cheesy for this group, but I use this as an example, especially with younger people. It's a real egg, it's organic. It says U.S. Constitution on it. And just for argument's sake, I'll use it just around here. And it's kind of cheesy, I know. You can pass it around. I use it as an example that it is a very delicate object. It's strong in a way, but a delicate object. And as we pass it from generation to generation, it needs to be intact. And try not to drop it or crack it. Really, the objective is to try and keep this intact. I know it's a little kind of like,
Well, see if it makes it around.
yeah, see if it makes it around. Ernie's got an omelet at the end here, but that's something. It's something that's a really key point, and I use this as an example, not to have to explain to this group, but if the people behind don't understand the reasons how we got here, then they're going to trash that Constitution, which has been, and every time you have a fall of a country or of a republic, they trash the Constitution. They turn on it for chicken in every pot. They turn to what they don't know from the ignorance that bred it. And that's something that's my deepest fear. That's what's always happened, I'm sure we know from history. So, that's my quick intro. Let me talk a little bit with my background. Since Ernie asked me to do so, I kind of hate to talk about myself with all this, but I am a physician. I am an integrative physician. I'm licensed as a naturopathic medical doctor, which in this state is really like a little best of both worlds. I'm not a homeopath, but people say you're homeopath. No. Integrative doctor. I have a specialty in prostate cancer. It's an international practice. Most of my patients fly in from other countries or other states. They pay cash. It's an all cash practice. That took a little time setting up, but I did that on purpose because I knew it was coming years ago. But it also I act as a translator because I have to talk to the alternative doctors and explain to them, and alternative patients, explain to them what their surgeon's telling them in their 5-minute visit. They don't even tell you anything. You know, what is the surgery they're about to cut out? What does this drug really do? So I have to explain to them. At the same time, I have to speak to the surgeons, and I did rounds with Mayo surgeons, and I have to talk to the surgeons and explain to them what all this woo-woo alternative medicine is, and what actually maybe the biochemical pathways are with certain herb and interaction with the drug and all this sort of thing. Good job, Aaron. So anyway, so I have to act as a translator for that, and that's sort of with my medical background. Growing up, though, what kind of got me set up for this was I guess, as far as voting for Ron Paul in 1988, to me it was kind of a no-brainer at the time. I couldn't wait to register to vote. Most people couldn't wait till they're 21 to drink. I counted the days till I was 18. I remember running to the post office to register. It was a big deal for me. My grandparents raised me. My dad's Italian, that's half the problem, but anyway, my parents got divorced at a young age, and I wound up growing up with them. They're from the Great Depression, and some of you, I'm sure, have kind of, if not from the Depression, have family that were touched by it. And from the Great Depression, my grandparents taught me, first of all, Austrian economic theory, and I'm going to touch a little bit about Austrian, maybe a big picture way to, I know you guys all know what Austrian school is, I'm not talking down to you with this, but a way to maybe explain to others in a general sense.
Well, some people don't, so if you don't
Okay,
know.
well, I'll give you when I get to that point then. You might find it interesting. But they taught me Austrian basic economic theory, also from the Great Depression, how to watch your liberties and to prepare for another economic problem, which we would happen. You know, in 1971, two things happened. We chatted the other day, and it was interesting we had a talk. You know, 1971, we were taken off the gold standard by Tricky Dicky, remember? So he took us off. And also in 1971 was the formation of the Libertarian Party, made up of a lot of Austrian scholars, understood economics. Now, they got together for different reasons, and maybe somewhat of a coincidence, but a lot of people I know from that time, too, had said it was a kind of a, more than a coincidence. You know, when you understand that you take off the gold standard, you're lighting a fuse. It's not a matter of if, it just depends how long that fuse is until the bomb goes. So they knew between 30 and 50 years, somehow we would have an economic dirt nap. And so this is something that I grew up with in my teens. You know, I'm knowing that I'm going on 20, it's 1988 or so, And I knew that by the time I hit 40, which supposedly is my prime, I don't know if it is or not, I still kind of wonder with my hair falling out, but you turn around and you're at 40, and you're thinking, when I hit that age, am I gonna be married? Will I have kids? Where am I? I'm too old here, but not old enough to retire yet. You're kind of right in that stuck spot. So I had to think, what can you do if you know the economy's gonna be going down around that time? Most of my friends didn't know this. They're all going to real estate and sales. This is after the Reagan 80s, and everyone's making money like that Wall Street movie. So what do? Well, my grandparents said, Phranq, they said, there are 3 things during the Great Depression where you'll never starve. They said, A, if you could feed people, if you're a farmer, maybe even work at a food store. B, if you could fix things, if you're a plumber or a mechanic. And C is if you could heal people. And if you can do any of those 3, you'll never starve. Now, my grandfather also gave me a 4th one. That was if you always played an instrument. He goes, you can always play your sax and get some money on a hat. So he always encouraged me to play the sax. But that aside, those are the 3. And I went with medicine for a number of reasons. And it paid off in many ways, especially it's a very question able to help people at the same time. But anyway, that's one of the backgrounds that I had of learning this. Also in Philadelphia, there was a talk show host named Irv Homer. Most of you probably don't know him. Has anyone heard the term or the name Irv Homer? He was sort of like, I hate to use this word, but the early Rush Limbaugh of the East Coast. And I say that, gosh, hope it doesn't strike me down. I mean that because he was one of the early syndicated talk show hosts in the East area, Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, and he was a libertarian. And he was extremely well respected by both sides. Because at the time, they didn't know what a libertarian was. He just seemed balanced. He seemed to make sense because he just talked common sense. He called himself the College of Common Sense. He also taught Austrian economics and had a heart attack on the air after 30 years of trying to explain to people a very basic concept about money. Like he said, you can't have honest government with dishonest money. And that's the problem with that. He said this every time, for years. Matter of fact, he had Irwin Schiff on the air. You guys know Peter Schiff? Many of you do. And his father, Irwin. And I had the opportunity to have dinner with him when he was promoting his book, The Federal Mafia, which I have an autographed copy at home. I earned worth some money. But Irwin talked about the basics of Austrian school, which we'll talk in a bit, which is, he told his son Peter, Austrian economics, which is really called the classical form of economics, is like gravity. You drop the ball, it falls. There's no way out. You always know you have righteousness on your side and math on your side. And so that also kind of set the groundwork for my background. I don't want to keep going into the rest of that, but when I finally finished medical school, I decided, as I said, to have a cash practice because I also saw what the government was doing. I wanted nothing to do with the government or insurance. I tell my patients, I say I practice libertine medicine. I tell my patients, I hate government, I hate other insurance companies getting in the way of between me and you as my patient and that very holy, revered relationship that it used to be. So it kind of helps. The other problem is the good news if you take cash, if you take only cash and you don't do any insurance, HIPAA and the government can't touch you. And this is something that even doctors argue with me about because it's in their world, of course you have to have HIPAA, of course you have to have all these codes and ICD-9 codes. Every time you come to see a doctor, they put all these, they give you a code for everything. When you don't take $1 from anyone except just your patient, you are exempt from these things. I don't have to have electronic records. I don't have to submit it to the government. I can have a record in pencil and deal only with you. So we can talk about your genetic background without the government having anything to do with it. There's a lot of benefits. And just one quick thing with medicine, I'll move on to these other areas. The Patriot Act, 2001, and we all love that, but the real scary one was only redid it 2 years later, right? The little sunset review was like the Patriot Act 2.0. And everything, no one was paying attention. They did it over the summer. They decided to, put in everything they forgot to the first time. And one of the things they put in there was, if any of your medical records happen to be electronic, National Defense and Homeland Security has access to it. Because you never know, terrorists might have a prostate problem and they have to figure this out.
No figure.
Yeah.
They made it where everybody had to make everything electronic.
Exactly. So first they say, anything that happens to be electronic, we have access to. And then, at the same time, you had HIPAA laws coming out saying, in order to make it more safe for you, so we can hook up all of your records and also the green movement, so we cut down paper and all these things, we're going to now say, you have to take any dollar from the government Companies require the same thing because insurance companies take money from the government, so they have to put in your contract as a doctor. You have to have electronic records, especially with Obamacare, and that's just a requirement. So on one hand, it's saying anything that's electronic goes to electronic. And exactly, the two hands, it's how they work, so Ernie's talking about as well. It's just, you see this happening. So anyway, I wound up deciding to have a cash flow practice, and going from there, early 2000, of course I was buying gold and silver at that time. I wound up, selling my home, about a year or so before the collapse, and rented. And some of my friends said, "Why are you renting? You're a doctor. We want to take this money from your house and flip it and all this." I said, "Because you guys don't know the train is about to hit you." So I was preparing for that. They never had 401ks. I invested overseas, and just kind of preparing for it. The problem that really is frustrating now is what Dr. Paul's dealing with. When you make these kind of investments back in 5-10 years ago, you're crazy. You're missing the boat. You're insane, and everyone else is flipping homes. And then, when the economy started, to fall down, 2008, and the average person starts seeing this, and George Bush is up there crying on TV for bailout, and John McCain was running there to sign the bill. You remember that when I confronted McCain that day. He turned red real quick. But, then they tell you you're lucky. You're lucky with your investment. Now, the worse the economy gets, the more money most of us make. And now we're unpatriotic. Right? That's what they're labeling Dr. Paul. Same thing. He's made more money than any other candidates when they release those records with his investments. Not one candidate comes close to his investments. And yet now they're calling him unpatriotic, whereas before it was crazy. This is insane. So get ready for that one, of course. So anyway, I'll get off that point. But Ernie asked me when I was on this show, and kept trying to grill me. He's like, "Well, Phranq, what's in your background maybe that, how did you see some of this?" And a lot of it mainly I think is my growing up with my grandparents. So although my brother grew up with me and he wasn't as interested with it, there's a few other things I thought to bring up. I have a real issue with justice. I won't go into the whole Myers-Briggs thing all over again, but there's a personality indicator called the Myers-Briggs, maybe you've heard of.
Yeah.
They actually use it now. They use it for the feds use it, police, like in order to hook up partners. They actually figure out your personality type, and it's quite accurate. It's quite interesting if you look into it. They even use it for the dating services. Match.com, that's actually what they're using now is the Myers-Briggs, so it's pretty good. Anyway, one of them is called the INTJ, which is the rarest. It's less than 1%. When I first heard that, I thought, wow, that's special. But then you realize real quick that basically that you don't get along with anybody, because you're so it goes out the window real quick. And probably many of you might be in a similar boat, right? You all feel like you're always outside looking into the party. But I think it's helped in many ways because INTJs, they found people to go into this profession. They look at what professions they go into, although I'm a physician, but judges often become INTJs are judges. This ability to balance, fairness and logic with creativity. Yeah. Because sometimes justice is not as easy as a rule book. So one of the components may or may not. The other thing too that I found interesting was, I'm going to kind of notice about it. I was coming from Philadelphia. When I grew up a little bit in Colorado, when I lived in Colorado as a youngster, everyone had to learn how to ski. Every class trip was to learn how to ski. So you're 6 years old and you're going down mountains. In Philadelphia, every class trip is seeing the Betsy Ross house. It's going to the Liberty Bell. It's learning Independence Hall. As a matter of fact, I brought with me, this is an actual true replica of the key for Independence Hall, where the Constitution was written. And pass around, guys, it's pretty heavy, it's like iron. But I tried in the door, the Constitution. But maybe it's growing up in a city like that, and also politics in Philadelphia is interesting. When they take it as kind of real pride, probably more than other cities I've found. I think just because we feel like we have this mantle of keeping the liberty alive in history and bringing that up, so that might be part of it. And one last point, and I'll move on to the convention issue, is magic. This is an overly expensive deck of cards. When I was younger, I used to do magic tricks, which tricks is kind of a derogatory term when you're un-PC, magician, but I'm not allowed around poker games, I'll just put it that way. What's interesting with magic is that people that study it for a while, you realize that the world is not what you think. And magicians have two things in common often. And I'm not saying this about me for the first one. Most of them, whatever the religious upbringing, many of them become atheists or agnostics later on. Penn and Teller, Houdini, they all have this habit of doing that because after a while you start to see this kind of the emperor wears no clothes, or the man behind the mirror. I'm not saying that I'm atheist myself, and that's really not why I'm here, but just it makes you question things. And the other, that most magicians that I've met, they become libertarians. Kind of tell another example, there's others out there. And it seems like you really start to see, looking at the left hand, looking at the right, to understand the psychology. Magic is mostly psychology. People think it's the trick. Tell me what the gimmick is. That's not the trick. You think it is, it's something else. Because I can show you what the trick is, but doing that, performing it, being able to watch people, it's a little different. And to give you an example, there's two kinds of people when you do a trick for someone. And this is the psychology I teach in my medical school class, teaching them about how to look at patients using the art of magic. But there's two types of people. Some you do a performance for, and they sit back and they enjoy the performance, or they just let their guard down and they just take it in. Then you got people, like this guy, and most of you in here, who we call the hand burners. Those are the people that, they don't just sit back and enjoy it, they're like, all right, this guy's not gonna get me. I'm gonna watch his left hand, watch his right hand, I'm gonna get this guy. And, there's this thing that you don't want the magician to have to somehow beat you at the game. And so you kind of watch it. And I think many times there's maybe that mindset of being vigilant and not letting government, get one over on us. And the work that Ernie is an example, I keep plugging him because he's sitting right here and he's done so much. But, watching these bills and watching that sleight of hand, maybe there's something to that as well. So I'll move on from that as far as my background there. As far as I mentioned why I get involved with the Republicans or the blue pills. I didn't for a while. I gave up. When you're doing it in 1988 in the 90s and no one's around, there's no internet, so there's nowhere to really bond with people, you're completely on your own. I mean, I would show up at libertarian meetings and I was the youngest guy, kind of like a Republican meeting today. There was nothing going on. I would donate whatever money I had, which was not much, and you're just banging your head. And then you have this concept that why can't people see this issue of fairness? How is it possible? And all you people think, not you, but people think that we have this fair country, and they'll argue with me. And I'll say, wait a minute. How is it possible that you go to vote in a voting booth? There's four names on the ballot of the United States. 4 names. And yet you only know 2 of them. I mean, just out of basic fairness, how can you vote at 50% of your options for the supposedly the free world and you don't know? And then you can tell me, who's the quarterback on every team. You can tell me who's on American Idol and all this, but you can't tell me who's actually running. And yet they all get their little stickers saying, I voted today, and they all feel proud and all this. And yet, they don't even know what's going on. And there's a lack of fairness. There's like a blindness. And I think it's a generational issue more and more today. But I use an example. My grandparents, God bless them, beautiful people. But they came from a prejudiced world. They had prejudices that we often don't know. Today we see through. All men are created equal, but minorities get to the back of the bus. They didn't really see that 2 + 2 = 4, not 23. They couldn't see it. And I think we're finding a similar issue now, where people, as I said, can go for people and have blindness and not even get angry that they don't know 2 of the names. I think at its core, no matter who we want to blame government and all this, it's the American people who, for all these years, can look in the mirror and not see the problem. So that's a basic tenet of fairness that I think really will solve a lot of it. And what's also a shame is, when you think about it, the Libertarian Party is not a third party. It's the third party. It's the third largest party, right? And yet they've been talking about Austrian school economics and basic economic sense since they began, the Federal Reserve for decades. And yet we're talking about it now. So it's really a shame that even if you didn't want to vote for them, to have a voice, a legitimate voice, kept out. We're paying for it now. We're paying for it now because we're talking about it now, but it's through the Republican Party. And I even tell the Republicans, when I argue with them, you guys created Ron. He's Frankenstein's monster. You created him. I argue with them that you guys created Fox News. They want to play Fox News. Well, Fox is every action is a reaction. So if there's bias, 10-20% bias in the news media and all this area, Fox News kind of pull all that together to counterbalance the other part of the scale. I tell liberals, you guys created Fox, and you Fox people, you neocons, you created Ron Paul. Because if you allowed third parties in the debates, there would be no need for us to infiltrate your party, right? We could be having our own thing, just allow them up on stage. There's a quid pro quo, an idea of fairness. They don't seem to see it. There's a blindness. And I also argue to them, I'll use an analogy, I'm being from Philly again. My friends, they bleed green Philadelphia Eagles, they're always Eagles fans. I don't care much about football. I watch sumo wrestling. I went to college in Japan, so I'm in sumo. Yeah, that's where I graduated. But yeah, sumo's pretty cool. But anyway, but I sit back and I talk about football. I say, imagine you have the Eagles and they win every game, all the way to the playoffs. And then we sit back and say, you guys still have McNabb as quarterback. And we all know McNabb blows the game every time in the Super Bowl. So we're not going to let him in. The Eagles, why waste the time? Now, I don't know if any of you guys from the East Coast, from Philly, Chicago, but Philadelphia would tear that city apart if they didn't allow the Eagles in the game, if they passed every game, right? Just when you talk to your status friends, just bring that up. How would you feel if the team did that? And then if someone won the Super Bowl, would you think it was a fair win? If they didn't get to compete with top teams, are they really the best team? So these are just some concepts.
It's funny. They do the same thing with the sports teams. If your team is not getting any play, like this year it was the 49ers, they were doing really good, but the media wasn't talking about it. It was all about the Patriots and these other teams. And San Francisco was ignored. And all the fans from San Francisco got so frustrated, kind of like how Raw Paul people are, that the media wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
They just kind of ignored it.
Yeah, you'll definitely see this. Well, let me talk about the convention. So I went to the convention. I was involved about 2007. I got involved with just Ron Paul's back from the dead. I mean, and he's a Republican. I'm thinking, what's going on? It's like a Twilight Zone here. This guy voted for an 88. He's back, and I'm like, what? So I told my other half. I said, you never seen me before in my political days, but I think I'm about to get back involved, and I had to prepare for it. So I got quite a bit involved, joined as a PC, things that Ernie was talking about as well. You think you're a delegate, you're trying to be involved. The first time we're like entertaining seals. We were just this little strange little attraction, these little funny people on the side throwing snowballs at Sean Hannity. They didn't seriously of what we were doing. But from my point of view, we were making headway, just having that presence. I'm sure we all know. 4 years later, a whole different story. And what's really creating this is the internet, in my opinion. I often ask young people or people now, I'll say, okay, you like Ron Paul. Why? Why are you into the liberty movement? And they'll say, because I'm for liberty. I'm for freedom. And that's great. I can't argue with you about that. But the question is, where was this movement 20 years ago? I mean, liberty and freedom, like he says, freedom's the answer. What's the question? It's always been there. So what has changed in 20-something years? Is it the economy got worse? Is it the fact that standard of living is going down and the new generation is being handed a bill that finally we're have to pay for it? Maybe that's what it is. I think it comes down to just the internet. It's a generational divide, it's a generational war that we're fighting. It's happening with Arab Spring, it's happening in Europe, it's happening here. Same age group, there's this division, and it's the people that are getting around the standard media in all of their countries, all the same generation being handed the bill, and the internet is the way around. When I was younger, this is how bad I was. I used to take VHS tapes and record all the presidential debates. Oh yeah, and I'd index them, right? When Ross Perot said this and Clinton said that, I'd index them. And then when something would happen years later, I'd take my 3 friends I'm arguing with, put the tape in, try and fast forward, find it. I didn't have many friends. And so that's what I was trying. And you know what? You beat your head against the wall. I don't remember. 15 minutes ago, they moved on, they're on the game or something. Now something happens, I can send any video that was done at any time and send it to 3 million of my best friends and keep on them over and over. And that has just been such vindication. I feel so free just to sit back and watch these videos and see what's happening. It is truly what's changed this. They're stopping it, except the government, and they're going to keep trying to stop it, and that's a whole other problem. That's where they know the war's at. So that is what's happening. When I go there, so I went to the convention this last time. The details, Ernie did a great job explaining. So let me just kind of give you the milieu of the people that were there. First of all, one of the things I've learned is there are a lot of sleeper cells. Let me just give you one example. I'm recorded, so but some of you guys may or may not like him or not, but Representative David Schweikert, I look at him as I actually like him a bit. He actually worked on Dr. Paul's campaign back in '88. And from what I have gotten to know him personally, he's and I'm not here to promote David Schweiker, that's not my point here. It's just that from what I have learned from some people, many of them are playing this game of walking that line. Now some of us, especially in this room, to us it's holding up prisoners and there's no compromise. There's no compromise. You say it the way it is and you do it. But this war is being fought on different fronts. I mean, we have people, I guess the progressive, they're out there and pushing it and saying no compromise. But at the same time, there's people that are now in power that are kind of waiting for the signal, so to speak. And I'm telling you, those people are out there. You may not think so, you might maybe some of their votes or this or that, and maybe I could be wrong about a person here or there, but I know these people are out there. I've spoken to them personally about it, or at least this before even they're elected. It's like, but how do you even get in a position? How much do you compromise? How much do you turn to the dark side, like the end of Return of the Jedi, and keep your integrity and come back to the light? I mean, that's the trick. And some, I think, can do it. A lot of them can't, as Ernie and I are talking. But I just want to let you know that these people are out there. Not just a few that I know, but I'm sure in all different states, in their own congresses, these people are there. So I think they're also waiting to see the movement. When I was there also, many of the Republicans have been there for some time. State reps, for instance, the head of our career center at my medical school. She's one of these old Republican people that wear the little hats and go to the convention, rah, rah, the whole stereotype. And she met me when I was a student. She thought, wow, you're such a smart kid, but why are you this crazy libertarian person? And then when the Ron Paul movement began, she really was frustrated with me about it and thought I was a joke. But she respected me as a doctor and just kind of questionable. 4 years later, her husband, by the way, is an ASU professor in economics, and who argued with everything Ron Paul said and what I was trying to explain. 2 years after, 2010, she started seeing everything happen the way I predicted, and then her husband asked me to speak at the economic school about the basics in why gold is money and how Austrian economics works. So she began looking into it with her husband. And now she thanks me for it. Now she saw me just at the last convention. She took me aside. She has a little Newt Gingrich sticker, trying to stop Mitt Romney. She's got her little sticker, and yet it's like they all take me aside. They won't say this in a group. They all take me aside. Why? Because they're in a room now, and they're outnumbered. They got all these young people. They've never seen anyone under the age of 50 in their conferences. And now you have all these younger people, and they're all new. It's like you show up at your church, and everyone there is new, and you don't know who to talk to. So you kind of go with a couple of people real quick, feel safe. Well, that's what they're all doing. And
Give us percentages. What was it?
Yeah, I would say the crowd is probably, two-thirds definitely this is with Ron Paul. I would say age probably 50-50. Also, in this big field, when you're in that room, it's like an amphitheater in this church. What's interesting is that all the status people are all in the middle, and all the Ron Paul people are all on the outside, like in a ring, like Saturn's rings. And then slowly towards the end, when they knew the vote was coming up, they were trying to push off the vote, the older people just kept walking out, and you start seeing this ring all around the edge of all the Ron Paul people. Of course, they held the vote to the end. Matter of fact, he even said there was going to be a vote. They kept keeping the vote, pushing it back. Eventually, though, we pushed them for the vote. People were getting pretty animated about it, and then they weren't going to give us the numbers. They didn't have time to count them. They don't have the numbers, and we demanded the numbers. We had, I forget the gentleman who head of the Ron Paul group there, who ran up to give the presentation because whoever wins a straw poll, Sean. He'd have to give the presentation, whoever wins, to talk about your candidate. We had to listen to every candidate's representatives for 6 hours, talk about Russell Pierce and what a great guy he is. And we all sat there diligently, patiently, politely.
Trying to wait you out.
We're listening to all of their candidates, and we just had one at the end. They pushed it to the end, and then they all walked out. Now that's the type of arrogance that, I have to say, I come from a half Italian family. My uncle, a little mafia type, wear white shoes and loafers and the rest. But he used to tell me, you guys have heard different versions of this, which is, can't say the word, let's say, go to the bathroom on people on the way up, because you might meet them on the way down, right? Now I know Republicans don't believe in this thing called blowback, but it does exist. And the blowbacks that we have been with this party and this movement to the arrogance that's happened to us all these years, keeping all these parties out and these other views. So I just want to give you some insight that, again, this is not about Ron Paul winning. Of course, we want him to win, but this goes beyond him. It's a movement that'll keep going.
So when the people came to you, brought you to the side and saw what they talking about?
Well, they were basically, in a nutshell, they all said kind of the same thing. They would come to me because I was the only person that was a Ron Paul person that they already got to know. I was safe, suit or something like that, so I looked somewhat presentable, but they knew me. And they were just kind of like, well, essentially saying, we see what you're doing, and we believe, and a lot of them actually told me, we think, or I think, you are the future. This is going to happen. This is what's kind of shocking. They honestly see this movement as the future, but it's like they can't let go. They can't let go. It's almost like that they know they keep doing the same thing, and they just cannot take that step of faith to go to the next level. I mean, take foreign affairs as an example. Keep in mind, this is the generation, and barring people in this room who already see the light, but this is the generation that came from the Cold War. I mean, they were doing duck and cover under, nuclear bomb. And at the same time, this is a generation that had all the security from all the military bases and all these wars, and they didn't have to pay for it. They didn't have to pay for it. And this is a huge difference. You guys remember Bugs Bunny cartoons? Bugs Bunny. Remember Porky Pig? I'd be watching, watch the anvil fall on his head and all this. And all of a sudden, Porky Pig comes out, little fife, and they buy war bonds. Remember that? I was a kid, I'm like, what the heck is a war bond? I wasn't watching, cartoons. Well, the point of the war bonds was that American people paid for the war. They paid. They came out, they had little stamp books. They paid for it. That's how wars are funded. But of course, later on, with all the wars, the Cold War, and then having to pay off the Great Society because you have to keep the home front happy to pay for all those other wars, we ran out of gold, so therefore they took us off the gold standard, and that generation, the older generation, that's what they know. They never had to pay for it. So I often bring up, you guys all want these wars. Well, how about every time you get a paycheck, and then you turn around and your employer says, okay, you have to ante up $10 this week to pay for the wars. If every time you get your paycheck and you had to pay back for the war for that week of the military base, people would stop. And that's why they do what they do, is to get around that. So this older generation has never paid the bill. They don't understand it. And that is why, when Ron Paul keeps talking about foreign policy and economics, and then these neocons say, it's like they're talking seals again or parrots. They say, all right, we agree with Ron Paul now on economics. It's foreign policy now. 4 years ago, they didn't believe it was economic policy. Now they can't get around that one. So now it's the foreign policy. When they can't see how they're linked. They're linked because of what the government did to pay for the wars that they can't see because they're not paying for it. We're being handed the bill, our generation. And that's why it's even more transparent what we're feeling. So the time I have left, if I have a few, I think about 5 minutes or so.
Do what you gotta do.
There's a few other things as far as some comments or tips on talking to Republicans, just some odds and ends. First thing, and by the way, I'm not saying in any way in this group not to do whatever we do, because we are really the momentum, especially this gentleman here. I mean, I was talking about 4409 here on the radio. We all have our own powers. We're like the Liberty X-Men. We all do our different things. Ernie's got his, we all got our own stuff. This guy's like Wolverine. You keep him in the cage, and when we need something, bam, he takes care of it. It's like Pulp Fiction, Mr. Wolf. But anyway, but it's a compliment, man. But anyway, we all have our different abilities doing that.
That's all you have to say?
So we have these different abilities, and I just feel we have to kind of go towards our strengths. For me, maybe it seems like compromising in some of these Republicans and wasting my time with them. But as I said, it's important that we get them as much as possible. At least have them learn. One of the tricks I've learned with medicine is it's interesting. I prescribe drugs and I prescribe herbs. I can do both. When I prescribe a drug, I write a little script and I say, here's your Lipitor. Here's your Viagra, whatever it is, the patient gets it. And sometimes if they go to the pharmacist and they give them a generic, they get all riled up. No, I want what doctor said. I want the official name brand. But if I write a script where I tell them to buy an herbal supplement, oh boy, they don't want to buy whatever we recommend because they all have a friend of a friend that has something. They buy it online or some multi-level. All of a sudden they just kind of, it's interesting how it's different on how they look at herbs versus drugs because it has the official seal of approval. Now, the reason I'm saying this is when I talk to my medical students, how do you explain this to patients? If you keep trying to say, this is this one brand, and it's the best brand, this is the strongest fish oil. You're a commercial. You're supposed to be a doctor. You're not a commercial. So how do you do it? What you have to do is teach them the basics, let them figure it out for themselves. And because this is such a, they have to be empowered themselves to make that choice. They have to understand it, and then they'll come around. So a lot of the tactics are not argumentative with them. It's just giving them the groundwork so that they're able to work through it.
So not slamming them with Ron Paul. You're giving them the basis of the Ron Paul message, and then let them come to
Exactly. And I would just, in the time I have, I just want to give you a few examples that might work. First of all, the Nolan graph. You guys all know the Nolan graph?
Yes.
Right? Who doesn't know the Nolan graph? It's like the world's smallest political quiz. You guys have seen those? That's a fantastic tool. I gave a speech in front of the legislative district of Republicans. It's a long story how I was able to pull that off using some deals with the head Republican there who wanted us to have a voice. And there's different reasons why. One of the reasons is he's African American. He was the first chair African American. Oh, you'll find this interesting. When he was not chair and all the Ron Paul people were coming in 2007, he was told, because he was an up-and-coming, status, they were grooming him for that. They told him, we're all trying to keep these Ron Paul people out. And he kept asking, well, why? And he was never given a real answer about why. But he heard two things he told him. He heard, these people, and keep them out. And he had a real issue with that. All right? And that was all it took for him to question what he was being told, the orders from the group. Now, eventually, John McCain tried to hire him to be his little PR guy. He learned a lot about politics from inside there. But he also put out olive branches to libertarian members, including myself. I was able to give a nice talk for that group. One of the main message to them was not about Ron Paul. It was understanding the libertarian message and the movement. I said, here's the Nolan graph, and I explained the basics. That you can take the quiz and all, but the basic concept is that it comes down to two views of how you look at government in your life. How much government do you want in your personal life, and how much government you want in your social life? Or put another way, how much government you want in your wallet, and how much in your bedroom? That's really the whole thing. And so if you're conservative to its extreme, you want government out of the wallet, but you want government in the bedroom, telling us how to, gay marriage, all this kind of thing. On the flip side, the antithesis is liberalism. And that's where you want government out of the bedroom, but you seem don't mind having it in your wallet. So it's like the up, down, this kind of thing. Now, if you want government involved in both, we call you fascist, authoritarianism, right? That's at the bottom, status. What's the antithesis to that? Libertarianism. And when you're in the same company as Thomas Jefferson, we're in good company. And that is government out of the wallet and the bedroom. That's really what it is. And so what I tried to explain to this group of Republicans was that a lot of people, you keep thinking are independents, many of them really are libertarians. They just don't know it. They've been brainwashed to live a two-party system. They don't know, and they call them centrists or confused, and they go back and forth, and you guys are all fighting, this time we're going to sway Obama, then we're going to go here, we go back and forth. I said, it's a libertarian movement. You have to understand this. You may not understand South Park. South Park's libertarian. You may not watch Penn and Teller. You may not get the movement that's happening. But whichever political party can tap into that libertarian movement will hit the mother load. And that is what's starting to happen. They just don't get it, but they are now figuring it out. At the convention, those Republicans that heard my talk, they saw what I talked about 2 years ago, they're seeing it now, and they admit, they say, look, that's what's happening. There's no way, and that's probably also why they, trying to block us in 2010. One last thing, because I know probably, hopefully I'm not crushing you guys with patience too much, is I just make a quick talk about Austrian versus Keynesianism. You guys have heard these terms now, Austrian school Keynesianism. So let me just 4 minutes or so on this and I'll finish up. I think you might find it a little interesting with this. How many of you guys have heard those terms, right? All right, thanks. So it gets kind of a cliche now. So even Rush Limbaugh's trying to talk about it on the air. Bill O'Reilly, just 6 months ago, when he asked John Stossel what this Keynesian stuff is, right? He couldn't even pronounce the word Keynesianism. So it shows you the mouthpiece of the Republican Party doesn't even understand basic economics. That's why we're so lost. So let me give you a quick example. I don't want to get on economic theory. I can talk about aggregate demand and liquidity traps and all this stuff. And Charles Goliath could spend all day, and he's brilliant with it. But let me just put it into a big picture for it's an experiment. Keynesianism is what we all do, or most of the economy is. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. In most of the world, they're all Keynesian. They follow a Keynesian philosophy. It's only been around for 100 years. Before 100 years, we followed what was called economics. Now, we call it now neoclassical, or now the slang is Austrian school, because the people that brought it back from the dead tend to be from Austria, Austrian economists. But before 100 years ago, it was economics. It was just basic economics. So this Keynesianism is only around 100 years. What happened 100 years ago? Very key. The Industrial Revolution. And I'm not trying to go on a tangent, but it's really key. Humankind, especially in Europe and here, began to tame nature. We tried to find a way to train, and that man was here and nature was here. Before, nature was here and man, and we respected nature or God, but it changed. Architecture changed. Instead of a house and nature, now we're taking, putting man and putting nature within. Like, for instance, instead of living a house in a big wilderness, now we took Central Park and stuck it in a man-made world. Everything's in grids, Euclidean geometry. We want to control pesticides and shrubs. That's how the world changed 100 years ago. Next change, physics. 400 years ago, new classical Newtonian physics. It was all about understanding nature and respect for it. 100 years ago, my buddy Albert Einstein, they come out with ways to train nature, to control the atom. It was control. We get the bomb. What else happened in my field, in medicine? Before 100 years ago, it was called medicine. It wasn't called natural medicine, it was medicine. You respected the body. You allowed the body to heal on its own. You treat the underlying cause, right? You believe in the healing power of nature. That's how medicine was. 100 years ago, we had antibiotics and we understood chemistry. So now we have what we call today allopathic medicine. That's where, scientists and doctors can outthink nature. You have a pain, don't just give you a stimulus and cortisol. You're diabetic, too much sugar, we'll give you a drug, Lipizide, so you can keep eating more sugar. We're going to control the system. And what happens, like any time else, when you control the stimulus, you shove something in, you're forcing against nature, you get side effects. You squeeze a balloon here, it pops out over here. Basic philosophy of medicine, that's naturopathy, that's what happened before. So before 100 years ago, natural medicine. Since allopathic medicine, we're having a revival of natural medicine. Now, let's get to economics. The exact same thing happened. Before 100 years ago, we believed in the economy being organic. Matter of fact, Hayek talks about this. That he even says, even in one of his famous raps, one of his videos, he says, the economy is not a car. Put away your tools. You don't need a mechanic. Believe in the economy because the economy is organic. That's the whole concept. That early economics was you believed in letting the system recalibrate in itself, just like an organic being. That is what the Austrian or classical economics was. But 100 years ago, we have, just like Albert Einstein, we have Professor Keynes, hence the name. Professor Keynes thought we could control the economy. We could control it. So he wants to go against what nature says. The nature of the economy, and I'm going to finish up here in a second because some guys are probably tired. In the nature, you want to rest, okay, and heal. The economy wants to rest and heal. If you don't have any money, you save what you have. If there's a drought and you don't have much food, do you eat less to save food? Do you eat the same, or do you eat more? Well, human nature says, for survival, you eat less, you save. That's what human nature does. But Professor Keynes realized this and called that the animal spirit. That meant that's the reaction, is to save. Keynesianism says we don't want to save, you want to spend. So it's all about spending. And so that's what Professor Keynes thought, is that we have to go against what nature is saying, and we need to control it. We need to force people to do what they don't want to do. And that is what eventually led to this 100-year experiment that has been kind of the equivalent of conventional medicine today. One last thing, and it's changed. It's easy for us to beat up on Keynesians. Keynesianism is a philosophy that I disagree with, but it has its place. Just like conventional medicine has its place. Do I want to use medicine for everything? Drugs? No, but there's times you need it. You have to use it in certain doses. What happened happens in medicine is that it's okay to use drugs once in a while, but you have to have controls. I know some of us don't like controls here, but the one control here is the doctor's script. The doctor knows enough when to limit the medication. If the patient has free reign to the drug you want, you either call you Michael Jackson, and you see what happened to him. Okay? Because there was no controls. That is what happened in 1971. So we have all this economy was trying this experiment called Keynesianism. We're going against what we're supposed to do. We're spending when we shouldn't. And then in 1971, we get rid of the script pad, and we go off the gold standard. So now we have the worst. We have a potentiation. Keynesianism with no restrictions. And that was what the fuse, that's what the Austrian schoolers or neoclassical people like Ron Paul, which got him in, that's what started him with a lot of this, was his understanding of this. And that's how people, going back to the very beginning, my family predicted a lot of this to what we have today. So I don't want to keep rambling because I'm Italian. I mostly have Polish. I'm keep quiet when I'm out of here. That's my quiet side. But hopefully it gives you a little insight about what I'm seeing with the Republicans, some basics in economics of when you hear these terms, what's happening, how this will be predicted, just math, gravity, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
How many was at that convention?
Oh, gosh.
About 800.
About how much?
750, 800.
So, yeah, actually, well, put it this way, Ron Paul got 256 votes himself, and that's the ones, and most people didn't even vote. So there was probably close to 1,000 people, if not.
The next, it went something like 250 something to double digits, 20. I mean, it's like, it was, he's 2-3 times.
Yeah, the vote was this. You had Romney.
There was crap load of Ron Paul over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Romney got 17 votes. Mitt got 17 votes. Newt Gingrich got 20 votes. Santorum got 8, and Ron Paul got 256.
All right.
Thank God for Diebold, we got.
I missed,
early voting.
You gonna be able to compete with that even a little bit?
Just got my thing.
So we'll give you a second to say your thing, but I want to make this point. The Arizona Breakfast Club, if it you didn't come here, you didn't know about it. I mean, before the internet, it was Breakfast Club. I mean, I remember in the 90s, you heard a lot of this stuff from back in the day, but Austrian economics was not on the menu. Anti-war was not on the menu. So we were libertarians that became friends with a lot of people at the Arizona Breakfast Club. I just hope that you understand from the presentation from Phranq that we didn't know. We knew. We knew what was coming. So when you look at it and you go, God, they're just not quite there. They don't really understand. Ernie's kind of a little off a little bit. These guys are doing their, I'm not, so while we had great candidates, like Judge Buttrick and Caro and myself and Scott Granger in '94, and we kept, on and on and on, and it evolves, and we get more and more and more. It was because we knew. We knew. It's math. What's coming is coming. It's here. Okay. And Ron Paul, I remember it was after. That's why he'll lose or come in fourth, and he's like, "Yeah, baby, we're kicking ass," And everybody's like, "Damn it, he's supposed to be like hanging his head and leaving or something," because he understands what's going on.
Yes.
It's a cultural thing. So one thing that he said really struck with me, and he finally said it. He goes, we've always been saying that if we don't fill in the blank, we're going to have to pay the price in the future. And he goes, the future's here. Done. There's no stopping what's going to happen. And it's going to get bad. This is why years ago, Don and I started learning how to do chickens and goats and gardening, and we do entire issues on that. We just published an e-zine last night. It's all on war. 80-something pages of war.
Yep.
We thought this was going to be like 30, 40-page little magazine. It turned into 80-something pages. Don and I finished it like, 4 in the morning or something. This is war is a racket.
Right.
The war is a racket speech that Smedley Butler gave in the 30s was read by Glenn Jacobs. You know, big Kane, WWE wrestler kind of guy, real smart, libertarian, good guy. He read it, and the MP3 put. I listened to that while I was doing it. I go, this guy, 2 Congressional Medals of Honor, a whole bunch of other medals, blah, 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 blah. Boy, big Marine and everything. In the 30s, they tried to get him to do a coup against FDR. Congress did an investigation. Yeah, he was right. They were trying to do a coup. He gave speeches. He was running for Senate, trying to tell everybody what was going on. He did this speech, War is a Racket, that later became a book. And the whole point that he was making is exactly what we've been talking about now. This is 90 years ago. Back in the late 80s, or she was a baby, Sierra. That was when we sat out. Remember the first meeting, Donna and I, it was between our birthdays in 1988, 89, because we have both our birthdays are in the March. Donna's birthday, March 20th. Don't forget she's going to be 50. Looking hot for 50, baby. That'd be. So this is what we did. We had this conversation that we were on a dike in North Mountain Park. I remember. We were sitting there and we realized I sure as heck did what was coming. 88, March 88. And I go, I need 10 years. I can't fight you. I mean, you got to be with me on this or do it because I know what's going to happen. We got to go. Oh yeah, baby, whatever you say. I mean, you got to learn 16 recipes for beans. I mean, this is going to get lean. Oh yeah. You know, the Lord said I done follow Ernie. That's right. Which verse is that? I'm going to need it a lot, I'm sure. So we did that. We had a restaurant in 2000, and by that time, I was good to my wife. So, all right, Donna, you know, we can just focus on money and do all that kind of stuff. Nah, it's all right. You just keep going. Because she started to really embrace this too. We knew what we were up against. We knew it was coming. It's here. Now what? Now what? The older generations that, like Phranq has said, they haven't had to pay the bill. And that's why we did the billboards a couple of years ago, right after the tarp. Remember? It's not my debt, with pictures of babies with barcodes on their butt. It's not my debt. You have one in the womb. It's not my debt. It's not my debt. How can you go to my granddaughter while she was in the womb and they passed TARP? I'm going, how can they rationalize that it's her debt? How do they do that? She's going to be born into economic slavery. Ooh, not. Just the mindset that there are people that think that they can obligate my grandchild into economic slavery. That somehow by the mishap, you know, it used to be a privilege, an honor, a stroke of luck or whatever to be born in this country. But by being born in this country, all of a sudden, sign up, baby. You owe an additional X amount, hundreds of thousands, I got it on you. I got a call from Jordan. I'll tell you this a little bit before we get that. What's your name? Before we get to Claire, give her a moment. I called last night from Jordan Page. Any of you guys know who Jordan Page is? Yeah. Jordan Page is coming February 22nd. He's staying at our home. We'll give him a car, whatever, so he can party and have a good time. He's going to be here to perform for Dr. Paul. That's going to be here for the CNN debates here in Arizona, in Mesa. He'll be there and whatever, and Jordan Page will be here and write it out. Okay. Great musician, a lot of good songs. He performed the whole thing in the place. They had him stay over there and, you know, and have a good time. He calls me last night and he says, Ernie, it's a long story, he wants to keep his name kind of close, but in the state of Washington. And he goes, the word is that Obama is going to come out before the end of during this election, that they're going to defund the National Guard. And he goes, why would they do that? Is this guy BS me? He's been good about this. Why would they? Wait a second. Well, you the process. He wants to bring the troops home. Blah blah. Give it back to we got to pay off, and then we have to fill that position with mandatory youth indoctrination. We work for the mandatory bank. So it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in financial student loans. Each of the what's the average? So what's the government going to do? We got to wait for you to get you from 1st to 8th grade. Then they, extend it to 12th grade in government school. Then here in Arizona, Jan Napolitano did what? Taxpayer-funded preschool. We need more years. See my point?
Now we get you after college.
Exactly. So now when you get done with college, shoot, we got another 2 years in the barracks working for the state.
You're You close.
And if you get a doctorate or something like that, maybe you're in your 30s. So I'm telling you, it's a mindset, and it can't be supported. Because why? Because we know it's math. Next, we're going to be talking about what you can do as a candidate. It's real simple. Go Secretary of State. I register as whatever party. I mean, Republican, Democrat, it's like 400, 500 signatures you need. As a Libertarian, it's like, let me think, 10. Okay? So you go in and say, I'm Libertarian, I want to get the Libertarian message, I want to go up and be kind of, I filed there, I get my signatures, we have a party, everybody signs, done, you go, you turn it in, you're on the ballot. Hello. See? You want to continue this message. You want to be able to talk about things nobody else will talk about. You want to make sure in your district, in your race, in your campaign, in your jurisdiction, on the congressional level, statewide, whatever it is, county, you want to go up and say, when they do the form, when they do the questionnaires, when you get interviewed, which you'll get, you go up there and you say, freedom, good government sucks. You say, what about the Fed? What about the war? What about? You do that, and you'll do exactly what Phranq is talking about. You change them from, they know it's coming. Before, they only had a face on it of, a lot of the Libertarians or myself or Freedom's Phoenix or something like that. Now they're seeing it's everywhere, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And they're scared. And they should be. Because they're not going to have anybody to barter or trade with. And we do. We got silver.
Why have you not, over the last few years, registered Libertarian voters?
Because we got enough.
You?
We got permanent ballot status. We could spend money on registering or doing it. Heck, you know what the world our Libertarian registrations come from? Come from the government with their tasers. There's cattle driving them. Is that all right? We're good. Waiting on you. Okay. Okay, let me go ahead and give you what this is real quick. I'll give her a couple of minutes to do because we'll get to Phranq and he'll give out winners and so on. In the mid-90s, 94, we did an initiative for a citizens grand jury. We said, look, you get X amount of signatures, percentage, like 10,000 signatures or something. The people could petition to bring anything to the ballot, or you just say, we convene a grand jury. Here's the signatures, you turn it in. We want a grand jury convened on whatever the issue was. The reason was it was kind of a national thing that was starting. In Oklahoma, they had this. In Oklahoma, there was an incident that brought it to our attention on a national basis. There was a university there where the guy that was in charge of the athletic department owned an apparel company. So he mandated that the students at this university had to buy their certain shirt, certain short, and certain everything through his apparel company. And the kids were like, yeah, they overpriced it and everything. He's making bank. So the kids go, this sucks. So they went and they did a citizenry petition in Oklahoma. You get 5,000 signatures, it calls a grand jury. Oh, they didn't like that none too much. So we were like, oh, that's a cool idea. Now, what Claire is saying, right? What Claire is saying is that this grand jury ability already exists, and she wants you to know about it, wants some help on it. Go.
My name is Claire Redding. I'm from Mesa, Arizona. I attended my very first breakfast club when Harry Everingham had it in 1984. I also became a Republican precinct committeeman in 1984, and there was only one person in my precinct, and it was me. Until I forced my husband to do it with me, and he luckily got a job out of town so he could quit. Now there's 9 of us, and at least 6 are Ron Paul supporters. When you are a precinct committeeman, you get to get your walking list for your neighborhood. You don't want to knock on doors. You get their phone numbers. You get their birthday, so you know how old they are. Hi, let me tell you about my kid. Would it be okay if I sent you an email once in a while? Okay. We can change the influence of these people, and they're your neighbors. You want to be the go-to person for political things in your neighborhood, but that's not what I came to talk to you about. You all know Leo D'Onofrio was the person in New Jersey, semi-retired attorney, sued his Secretary of State because he didn't think Obama should have been on the ballot because he wasn't a citizen. And they let that go by saying that he had no standing, but by the time I saw this other article that he had posted in 2009, I knew who he was, so it caught my attention. He said that the Fifth Amendment had been amended by footnote in 1946. when the American Bar Association wrote the civil and criminal rules of procedure to standardize all the courts in the United States, under Rule 6 or 7 at footnote 4, they said that citizen presentments are obsolete. Along comes Susan Brenner writing her PhD dissertation, and she changed it like that little telephone game to say they're illegal. So for 66 years, people have been pretending like we haven't had that. But it is a right protected in the Fifth Amendment. It says you're not be charged to answer for an infamous crime unless on indictment or presentment. Indictment is when the criminal complaint is at the pleasure of the government. The presentment is when you go directly to the grand jury. You don't want the prosecutor in the room, and the only time you do is if you have a question on a point of law, you can ask him. Well, speaking of Oklahoma, Dan Metter, the great researcher, right before he passed away untimely in 2003, discovered something in Title 26, the income tax code, that had been repealed by Congress. And he was so excited about it, he wrote a memorandum, as he was wont to do, and took it to his grand jury foreman, and the prosecutor was not present at the moment. Instead of helping him, when the grand jury foreman took the memorandum to the prosecutor, and instead of helping it move forward to take it to the rest of the people, they charged Dan with jury tampering. He was jailed for a few weeks. Now, I went to talk to the legislature about that and had a few meetings last year, and then, we're doing the budget, so come back next year. So I'm back. And now I find that we don't need a bill because it's already in the Fifth Amendment, and everybody swore an oath that they were going to uphold that and protect our rights. So I've turned some of Leo D'Onofrio's wonderful article, and I have a link for it at the top of my page so you can read it yourself. And I just lifted some of his verbiage and made some whereases and a therefore, saying that, yeah, we can go down and file a criminal complaint today if we want to. Well, a friend of mine has an IRS agent that has committed perjury, and it's provable in writing, and he didn't know what to do with it. He's a little hard of hearing, so I called the clerk. And I used a civil complaint, but how do I file a criminal complaint? And he says, well, you don't. And you don't? He's, oh, no, the prosecutor does that. And I said, oh, yeah, well, what if my complaint's about the prosecutor? We couldn't get anybody to take this IRS agent is going to just go like this to the law because she knows there's going to be no consequences. But if the legislature signs this, he can take it and file it, as soon as he gets enough people to recognize that. And it also should be for all the members of Congress, because there are federal grand juries as well. There's also county ones. I have also here a spot where if they can't go along with it and they don't want us to observe a right that's already protected by the Constitution, I left 10 blank lines so they could write why. And if these people have the guts to sign, then they don't get reelected. And I took it down and have it distributed to all the 90 legislators the first day of the session, January 11th, and I gave them until February 25th to answer. But then I realized the only people that are obligated to respond to me, if at all, are the people that I directly elect, and that would be the representatives and the senator from Legislative District 19, or McCain and Kyle and the Flake, and they haven't responded to me in years. So unless I get other people to help and take this to their districts, legislative and congressional, it's probably not going to go anywhere. I would like to see, like this judge in Georgia that said, yes, the Obamunist is eligible to be on the ballot again. He obviously accepted a bribe, and he needs to go in front of a grand jury and explain why he's violating our rights. So, there's a lot of different ways that we can use this, and I think it's an effective way we can start taking control and making public servants answer for their acts. Thank you very much.
For those of you that don't know, what happened in Georgia is a judge said, yeah, he's got to, present and show he's a citizen or he's not going to the Georgia ballot. And then the Obama administration says, well, screw you, and we ain't doing it, and whatever. And they got another judge that says, to him, and he's on anyway. So it's a power of the people to do this kind of thing. Now, I didn't know this. This is an interesting point. Upon the grand jury's indictment or presentment, how's that worded?
Indictment is when the complaint is at the pleasure of the government and the prosecutor takes it, because the government's not real. And then the presentment is where the citizen.
No, I understand that. What does it say? Where does it say that in the
In the
Fifth
Fifth
Amendment?
Amendment.
I know, say it.
All right.
Because I want to make sure we get the wording right. The presentment, you know, so then you go back and you want to know, all right, why did they put the word presentment? What does that mean?
I'll tell you in just a second.
So this has been an issue before, and I think we should, you know, at least, because where does it start? Up here, it's understanding it. Let me go ahead and read it.
It's so important, it's the first sentence.
Shut up. Captain Kirk had these. Okay. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, not a civil crime, an actual crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in. So, upon a presentment, what does that mean? I don't know. I think we should find out. They didn't put it there on accident. It meant something.
There's more detail in the article.
Okay,
What
go
about
read the
the-
article. Lance.
All states use grand juries. No.
Oh, what?
Not all states use grand juries.
Well, this is
This
federal,
state
so,
does.
yeah, so we
No,
need to
it's
find out.
federal.
Oh, I had a sheriff on from Delaware on this week. Jordan Colley says, I was at the sheriff thing up in Las Vegas, a MAC deal, you know, sheriff's thing. He goes, you gotta talk to him. This is what happened. He gets elected by a Tea Party kind of sheriff's going to assert highest ranking law enforcement, is going to protect your rights kind of thing, and so on. In Delaware, the sheriff is just goes to domestic calls and does court business, runs a jail or something. They're not like patrolling sheriffs and arrest people, which suits me fine, you know, but they, the point is that they elected the sheriff as the highest ranking elected official. They're the highest ranking law enforcement in any county. That was the whole of the sheriff. I elect him to defend my rights, right? So he goes, I'm elected to defend their rights. He was in law enforcement a long time. He got Tea Party, you know, approval gets up there, and he's asserting that I'm here and you guys can quit screwing with it and whatever. A county commissioner that's supposed to be over him gets pissed at him in a meeting and hits him with a book. Okay? Oh, that's a soft. Yeah, we're going to have this conversation. He goes up to the Attorney General's office. Attorney General does an opinion, no, sheriff doesn't have the ability to arrest anybody. You don't have anything. You do what we say. We got the state police. That Attorney General happens to be the son of Vice President Biden. So it becomes an issue. I like this issue. So we're following this issue. So to see where the sheriff's role in this. So there's a bunch of stuff we're working on. This Tuesday, Wednesday, the 8th, we're supposed to be going to courtside. I'm still getting confirmation that the girl is coming back, where the courtside police arrested her and confiscated her silver that she had in her wallet. What happened was she had 5 dimes and a quarter that were silver, well, and a dollar bill. So they gave her a check for $1.75. She goes, I don't want my check, I want my silver. It's worth a lot more than that. Nope, $1.75. Or you got to go to Parker where we're going to keep it, this and that, no, and you want it, we'll find back in the hole, and they put her back in jail because she wanted it, because they got her for not having a permit to sell her necklaces at the park and swap or something. So this became to our take because we're interested in the silver thing, because they had a silver dime card in there in her wallet too. They didn't touch. Okay, so we're going to see if you put it in our cards, if you get to keep your money. Well, what happened was we find out the reason they do this is a lot of this, you know, stuff with the courts and everything. They take all your money, put it in on their account because they can fractionally reserve derivatize all this crap, money, and build it up, even $1.75 into God knows what, you know, and their budget. You know, and they make money on this. This is how they do this stuff, because when they arrest you, money into confiscated and RICO seizures and all this kind of stuff has a number and so on. That's why in this Arizona State Guard thing, they say that they can confiscate your stuff, sell or lease or whatever. Why would they put lease? Who's going to lease your, what the hell are they talking about? It's all this derivative stuff. They're going to have a financial instrument that they're going to be able to multiply like fractional reserve banking. They're going to be the king's men on the highway taking stuff and making money.
Yeah.
But they're going to be claiming it's all for immigration. You don't want to do that. Well, I've seen this before. In the late 70s, they took Title 16, the election law, threw it in the trash, and passed all this crap that they're doing now under the name of anti-communism. Because in that bill it said it's illegal in Arizona to have a communist party. So what did they do? They created the two-party system. The left jackboot and the right jackboot, or the jackboot on your throat party. Okay? It's always something else. It's never what it seems. But it's always in the name of we love America. Well, I got that gene or whatever it is. Phranq, thank you.
Cool when I was out there.
What time is?
Ernie!
What time is her appearance on, the 8th February?
I don't know. It's late morning, so and I'm trying to get confirmation that she doesn't come back. They'll have a warrant out for her forever, and it was just some stupid thing. But they really wanted her because she didn't kiss, and lick boot and kiss ring enough. That's what it was. 846. First one at the table, get the goodies. 846. Bam! Happening. 846. You win, baby. Very good. Yeah. All right. Second choice is 845.
Wow, how'd that happen?
All right, this table's kicking butt.
Come on, okay. Third and last chance,
847.
859.
859.
859?
You got 859?
All right. Thank all of you for
Well,
coming.
you get a dime card right there, man. That's some money. I take that one, man. Take it.
We'll see you the 3rd of March,
Get started early.
and we'll have fun again, right?
Yep.
Hey.
Yeah, Tom Jenny will be there, and we'll have some fun with that one. We'll be bringing all this stuff up to Tom.